So emotional eating is about unmet needs, but how do we go about meeting those needs? So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Michelle. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist specializing in emotional eating. And today I wanted to talk about emotional eating and unmet needs. And so this seems really overwhelming. There are so many unmet needs, but if we sort of start from the beginning, emotional eating is a coping mechanism. It's something that we developed in childhood to help us cope with discomfort, uncomfortable emotions, distress. And it's something that we needed to develop because we didn't have certain needs met. So when we're going through this discomfort and distress, we usually would have had parents or caregivers that weren't able to model to us how to move through that, hold space for us to move through that discomfort, and help us create resolution. So this left us viscerally with these uncomfortable emotions. And so that feels uncomfortable in our body. And if we weren't able to move through that and resolve it, we had to learn to cope. We had to survive with it. And so food is really great at numbing the pain, distracting us, making us feel good temporarily. And so we start developing this relationship to food that's a band-aid, that's we're trying to meet these needs of soothing, of comfort, of resolution, but we don't have our true needs met. What we would have needed is to have been seen, heard, validated, attuned to, understood by our parents, for them to really validate what we were experiencing, help us move through that discomfort, those emotions by being really calm and nurturing, and then helping us resolve it once our nervous system calmed down by regulating and attuning to theirs. So this is usually not the case, especially if you are an emotional eater. And it doesn't matter, if your parents did their best, if you have this pattern, those deeper needs were not met. And so most likely your parents would have not been able to do that for themselves. Their parents wouldn't have been able to do that. And so you can see how this pattern is handed down. It doesn't mean that you don't need these things. These are needs. These are vital to you thriving. Otherwise, you develop coping mechanisms like emotional eating. And so when we have this pattern, we are looking for those needs to be met. And if we can't get them met in the way they're meant to be met, we are going to look for substitutes, and food is a substitute. But food becomes an issue because we start meeting our needs with food, which is really a band-aid. And then eventually that food, that coping mechanism starts impacting our body. And so other needs of acceptance are not met when we have physical symptoms in our body of maybe weight gain, or we feel out of control with the food. And so then we start doing, what we're conventionally taught, the diets and the exercise programs, and we never truly get into those deeper needs. And it's not to say that today, if you recognize those needs weren't met, you can go and sit with your parents and get them to give you those needs. It doesn't work that way. You have to go back into the deeper roots of this pattern. But now your needs, your emotional needs aren't met, and your nourishment needs are not being met because now you are using diets or sort of these external ways of relating to food and also with your body. So now we need to find a deeper resolution in these three areas. And so I see this with clients, and it was the same way for me as well, because when I was going through my emotional eating pattern, I tried to meet these certain needs, but all I was given were the diets because I thought if I looked a certain way, I'd be accepted, and the personal trainer, the exercise plan. So it was all about conforming to fit into this mold to finally be accepted and valued and loved and seen and heard. But that's a band-aid as well, because I couldn't control my emotional eating. Even when I got into that box that I wanted to get into, I still felt unfulfilled. And I see this with a lot of my clients. They get to this point where they think they're supposed to be to get these needs met physically, and nothing happens. They feel empty because they haven't been able to get into the deeper roots of this pattern. So what does it look like to meet these needs? Well, it's going to look like some practical steps and some deeper work. And this is why we need a structure to flow from. And this is why the Emotional Eating Evolution program has multiple layers. We're connecting back to food, your body, and your emotions. We have a structure around each of these categories, but we're also flowing to them and flowing from them and looking at the deeper trauma that created this unhealthy relationship. So a lot of the times, if we look at nourishing ourselves, we have a very dysfunctional way of doing that as emotional eaters. We're in the diets, we're in the something external to us said we should fast or we should eat this macro, and we outsource what works for our body. It's not to say we don't need guidelines, but we need guidelines that are connecting us back to who we are, that are helping us nourish our body, and also discerning truth from emotional hunger. Because now, because we've used food as this band-aid, that relationship isn't clear. The same thing with our body. We're given all these exercise plans, and the ones we're usually following, we're trying to fit into a certain box. So they're not actually attuned to our body, connected to our body. It doesn't help us understand and appreciate our body. And so we're moving further and further away from ourselves, not meeting those needs of being seen and heard and validated and accepted. And the same thing with our emotions. Maybe we think we shouldn't have these big emotions. We are positive. We are bypassing them. We don't even notice them, or we're triggered into our emotional eating to not deal with them. Here we're learning how to actually be with that discomfort, with the emotions in the body, and also getting into the root of what created this so we can resolve it and create a new way forward that's empowering, that's helping us meet our emotional needs, and seeing what other deeper needs we have in terms of boundaries or certain situations in our life, because our emotions are always giving us information about our life. And so if we cover it up with food, we're missing out on key things that our body is asking for, things we need to change in our life and implement. So as we start looking at these three areas in a really step-by-step way, we start uncovering our needs. We start hitting up against our resistances and seeing what works for us, what's true for us in our body. And so this is why emotional eating is not just about a magic bullet or the one thing, or you go to therapy. You need a multi-layered approach, because there's so many different layers happening in these categories along food, your body, and your emotions, but you need a way that's connecting you back to yourself. And so even if you had the best parents trying to help you move through your unmet needs, or trying to help you move through your discomfort or distress as a child, I see this right now with my son. My son is 9 years old, and I see a lot of parents trying their best, but because of the work that I do, I see certain key things that are missing. And even though I've done this work with my son, this deeper work of helping him with his emotions, whenever uncomfortable emotions come up, like anger or sadness or hurt, he would rather it feels so uncomfortable in the body because your nervous system becomes dysregulated. He wants to run away from it or move away from it as best he can. But I'm really attuned to him, and we talk a lot, and I guide him through certain processes when I see that his emotions are not dissipating, because emotions live in our body and they need to be processed and integrated there. And this is the deeper work we need to do while implementing certain strategies to connect us back to food, our body, and our emotions. So if we just do the strategies that we've been doing, like the diets, the exercise, the therapy, they're surface solutions. It's almost like ice cream on top of poop. If we don't clear out the poop and connect back to ourselves, we won't know which strategy actually works for us and which one connects us. So that's what we need to do in order to meet our true needs. And the more we can get into these unresolved situations, the deeper roots of this pattern, the more connected we are to our deeper needs, which are in the body. So we're going to have deeper needs emotionally, and even in terms of what next action steps we need to take. And so inside of the Emotional Eating Evolution program, the whole process is built to help you connect back to your needs on these levels. If you'd like to dive in and start getting a handle on your emotional eating, I would love to invite you to download my free guide called What Are You Truly Hungry For? In this guide, it's going to give you the first set of steps to really start getting a handle on this pattern. So that is discerning true from emotional hunger and catching your triggers. So you can find out more at the link below. If you are interested in joining the Emotional Eating Evolution program, you can find out more about the program below. This is my 12-week container with a step-by-step process. It's full of lots of support, coaching, accountability, in-depth processes to get to the root of your emotional eating so you can finally feel confident in your body and around food. So you can find those links below. If you have any questions, please let me know. Please be sure to like and subscribe, and I look forward to sharing more with you, and I hope you have a great day.